welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into something really pivotal. It's this recent EU-USA trade deal framework.
Yeah, it's a big one. Not just any agreement, right?
Yeah.
This is the one that will stop a potential trade war in its tracks.
Exactly. A huge moment for economies everywhere.
Yeah.
So our mission today, we want to really unpack the specifics. Look at the immediate impacts, figure out who it affects most, and maybe uncover some surprising details, some challenges that are already popping up.
Right.
Consider this your shortcut to getting up to speed on something complex but really, really vital.
And we're not just doing the what are we, we're really going to dig into the why it matters.
Yes.
Looking at those broader economic ripples and some, well, pretty fascinating nuances inside the deal itself. We'll be using Ireland as a key example, I think, to see how it all plays out on the ground.
Absolutely. Good plan. So
Yeah.
for context for everyone listening, this framework, it was finalized July 27th, 2025. At President Trump's Turnberry Golf Resort in Scotland. That was after talks with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
Right.
And as we sifted through the sources, well, some really interesting facts, some crucial insights started to emerge, especially for certain sectors. Let's unpack them.
Okay. Well, one thing that really jumps out is just how quickly this seemed to come together, to de-escalate things.
Yeah.
At its core, the deal involves the U.S. putting a 15% baseline tariff on most EU goods.
Okay, 15%, which, I mean, that's a lot lower than the 30% that was being threatened, right?
Definitely lower. So that's a direct, immediate impact. A bit of relief, maybe, but still a cost.
Right. So 15% is better than 30%, no question.
Yeah.
But it's still a pretty significant new cost for EU exporters.
Oh, absolutely.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Our sources show some products actually get zero tariffs.
Oh, which ones?
We're talking aircraft, plane parts, some chemicals, generic drugs, and specific agricultural products.
Okay, so that's a huge win for those specific sectors then.
Huge win. But it creates a very uneven playing field, doesn't it? Even within the EU itself.
It does. And looking bigger picture, this isn't just tariffs, is it? It seems to point to a clear U.S. strategy. De-risking key supply chains, reshaping global energy flows, maybe.
It seems that way.
But not everyone got off easy. Steel exports, for example, they're facing a much steeper tariff. 50%.
50? Wow.
Yeah, although there's talk of a quota system maybe to soften that blow a bit. So it's a very mixed bag, really depends on the industry.
Okay, so that's what the U.S. imposed. What did the EU commit to in return? Because our sources show some, well, pretty substantial pledges.
They are substantial. We're talking the EU agreeing to buy, $750 billion in U.S. energy products.
$750 billion. That's oil, gas, nuclear fuel, even semiconductors, and over just 3 years.
Incredible amount. And then there's the investment piece too, right?
Yes. Get this. They're also investing $600 billion directly into the U.S., and that includes buying significant amounts of military equipment.
So massive commitments on the EU side. And another key part, thinking about the balance here, cars.
Ah, yes, cars.
The EU committed to slashing tariffs on U.S.-made cars, dropping from 10% all the way down to just 2.5%.
2.5%.
Yeah.
That's clearly aimed at boosting U.S. car exports into Europe significantly.
No doubt.
Now, there was a bit of public confusion, wasn't there, around pharmaceuticals, which is, a massive global sector.
Right. President Trump initially suggested they'd be totally excluded, left out.
But then von der Leyen stepped in.
She did. Clarified pretty quickly that no, pharmaceuticals are included. They fall under that main 15% tariff.
Oh?
Though she did leave the door open for maybe separate talks down the line, but for now, 15%.
And that's a critical detail, isn't it? Especially for countries like Ireland, with such a huge pharma footprint.
Absolutely critical. Now, from an economic impact view, the immediate reaction. Broadly positive.
Okay.
The framework gave some stability, some predictability. It stopped that feared tit-for-tat tariff escalation.
A sigh of relief, maybe?
Definitely. You saw it in the markets on July 28th. Major European stock indexes, stocks, Europe 600, DAX, CAC 40, they all went up.
So that's the immediate good news. Relief that the worst was avoided.
Pretty much.
But when we dig a bit deeper, our sources really strongly suggest this deal isn't exactly, a 50-50 split.
No.
How asymmetric is it really? And what's that mean for the EU?
You've hit on a really critical point there. The consensus, pretty much across all our sources, is that this framework, well, it heavily favors the U.S.
Heavily favored.
Yeah. The EU seems to have made what a lot of people are calling disproportionate concessions.
Disproportionate.
They projected a 0.5% hit to the overall EU GDP. That kind of drives home the imbalance.
Right, 0.5% across the whole EU.
It's a classic case, isn't it? Winning a trade negotiation often means someone else feels the pinch.
Which brings us perfectly to how these high-level deals translate into, well, very real impacts for specific countries. Ireland, for instance.
Totally.
Ireland is the EU country most reliant on the U.S. as an export market. Just staggering numbers. In 2024 alone, $60.4 billion, that's what, $81.1 billion in goods exported to the U.S.?
Huge reliance. And here's the kicker, as you said before.
Yeah, the kicker. 75% of those exports are pharmaceuticals. 3/4.
Wow. So Ireland's situation really is a stark case study, isn't it? Even a deal seen as the least bad option can expose these big vulnerabilities if you're heavily reliant on one sector or market.
So that 15% tariff on most EU goods, that directly hits Irish pharma exports.
Directly increases cost for them.
No.
Potentially makes them less competitive in their single biggest market.
And it's not just the cost, is it? There's also Trump's focus on reducing U.S. reliance on foreign pharmaceuticals. That sounds like a direct sort of strategic threat.
It absolutely is. You're talking about potentially creating incentives for major companies, think Pfizer, Eli Lilly, to maybe relocate profits or even whole operations back to the U.S.
And for Ireland, that could mean.
Well, it could jeopardize something like 70,000 jobs and billions in really crucial tax revenue.
70,000 jobs. Billions in tax.
Yeah. It's not just about tariffs, it's about a potential reshaping of global supply chains for these critical industries.
That is a huge economic threat right there. Okay, what about other Irish sectors? Our sources mentioned significant uncertainty for dairy, things like Kerrygold butter, Irish whiskey.
Right. It's not clear yet if they'll land in those zero tariff categories everyone wants to be in.
So they could face the full 15%.
They could, and if they do, that could really hit their $2 billion food and drink export sector pretty hard.
It really highlights, doesn't it, how these big political decisions trickle down to something as everyday as, you know, what's on your breakfast table or in your glass in the evening.
It truly does. And there are implications, too, for the all-island economy.
Ah, right. The links between the Republic and Northern Ireland.
Exactly. The deal creates this tariff difference. Northern Ireland, under the UK's separate deal with the US, faces a 10% tariff.
Versus Ireland's 15%?
Right. So that could mess up integrated supply chains, particularly for dairy, which relies a lot on stuff moving across the border.
Okay, so complications there.
Dairy Industry Ireland has already flagged risks of added complexity, added costs.
Yeah, but there's a bright spot for Ireland in all this. Aviation.
Indeed. Aviation looks like a notable positive outlier here.
How so?
Well, with zero tariffs on aircraft and parts, companies like Ryanair and Ireland's huge aircraft leasing industry AerCap, for example, they stand to benefit directly.
Okay, so a clear win there.
It's a good example of how sometimes specific, high-value sectors can carve out protection, even when the broader deal isn't so favorable.
So let's look at the big picture then. What does all this mean for Ireland's overall economy, its budget?
Well, there was a report back in March 2025. It estimated a potential GDP loss of $18.4 billion for Ireland. That's like a 3.7% reduction.
Okay, but that was based on a worst tariff scenario.
Right. That was the worst case 25% tariff scenario.
Yeah.
So a 15% tariff is better than that. It mitigates it somewhat, but it still presents pretty substantial challenges.
And the Irish government's budget.
They'll definitely have to reassess. Their $9.4 billion budget package was based on a more optimistic assumption, a 10% tariff.
So the 15% deal creates a gap.
A significant fiscal headache, yes.
Given all this,
Yes.
how are Irish officials actually responding to the deal? What are they saying?
Well, the Taoiseach, Michael Martin, he welcomed the deal for providing clarity and predictability, avoiding the trade war.
Okay, focusing on the positives first.
But he also openly acknowledged that higher tariffs will make trade more expensive and challenging. No sugarcoating it there.
Right, and others.
Minister for Enterprise Peter Burke noted Ireland's, challenging position, but also emphasized the deal averted those much worse 30% tariffs. And Minister of State Neil Richmond, he described it as the least bad option.
Least bad option. That really is a stark way to put it, isn't it?
It really is. Highlights the difficult spot they were in. And you had Danny McCoy from IBES calling the deal fairly punishing for Europe.
Punishing.
Yeah, reflecting those broader concerns about the economic toll, especially on Ireland, which kind of feels the brunt because of its unique dependencies.
So what's truly interesting here is, okay, the deal provides some stability, avoids the worst case.
Right.
But you've still got ongoing negotiations on specific tariffs, spirits, dairy, plus the, let's face it, often unpredictable nature of U.S. trade policy.
Exactly. Those things continue to pose pretty significant risks for Irish exporters. Ireland just remains uniquely vulnerable because of how heavily it relies on U.S. trade and investment.
Okay, so let's try to distill the core takeaways from this deep dive for everyone listening. We've looked at this EU-USA framework deal, a 15% baseline tariff, but importantly, zero tariffs on some key items like aircraft, generic drugs. We saw massive EU commitments. That's $750 billion in U.S. energy buys, $600 billion in investment, plus that big cut to car tariffs.
Right. And while the markets initially reacted positively, a sigh of relief, the deal is widely seen as asymmetric, heavily favoring the U.S., it seems.
And we've really seen how these profound, complex implications play out, particularly for Ireland.
Yeah, its unique vulnerability really comes through. That heavy reliance on U.S. exports, especially pharma, now facing 15% tariffs, potential relocation threats.
Dairy facing uncertainty.
While aviation gets a boost. And then there are those concerns about the all-island economy and the tough position the Irish government is now in.
It really hammers home that point, doesn't it? Sure. While the deal gives clarity and predictability, maybe averted something worse.
It definitely did that.
It also brings in an era of more expensive and challenging trade. Especially for key EU economies like Ireland.
Exactly. And this connects right back to the why it matters for you, the listener, understanding how these huge, high-level trade deals really translate into tangible impacts on specific industries, on jobs, on national economies. And it's a good reminder, too, this is just a framework. Ongoing talks will continue to shape what it actually looks like in practice.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to mull over. Given that some officials are calling this the least bad option, while others label it fairly punishing, what does this framework deal really tell us about the future of global trade negotiations? Especially in this, well, increasingly unpredictable political landscape. And maybe how prepared are other nations to navigate similar pressures?
Good question to ponder.
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and definitely stay informed on these vital global developments.